Right, so we are back with Wendy Knowler in studio looking at the topic of milk going sour. And Wendy, I don't think anybody's surprised that it's happening quite a lot right now.
Yeah, well, we've got this extreme heat across the country, scheduled blackouts, which are now up to 4.5 hours at a time. And as you say, not a great combination for maintaining the cold chain. So it shouldn't come as any surprise that a lot more milk appears to be going off, as we put it, souring, a few days before it's claimed best before date. It's certainly happened to me twice in the last 2 weeks. And I know to many others as well.
Well, I mean, my work inbox and I've noticed the neighbourhood WhatsApp group full of complaints about this issue. And it's been pretty universal across the different brands of milk, across the different retailers. It's not an individual store issue necessarily. It's not an individual brand issue. Everyone is struggling to maintain the cold chain in the face of the power cuts, Wendy.
Exactly. And those are just what we're seeing. From the consumer perspective, what we're buying from the store and getting to our fridges at home, it's also interesting to note that the milk losses due to load shedding go all the way back in the supply chain. Many people would have seen on Twitter KwaZulu-Natal dairy farmer Alan Stratford's tweet saying that he'd lost 12,000 litres of milk after it turned sour due to what he termed power issues. So, keep in mind that if the farmers are battling to keep it cold at source, the problem's potentially starting back there
before it even reaches a bottling
at the
plant.
farm. But this is a consumer show, so we're focusing on the consumer experience of buying milk and finding that it goes off well before its best before date. So that's our focus, and we decided to take up the matter with the Dairy Standards Agency, which is a registered non-profit company tasked with ensuring the quality of milk sold in South Africa, that it's fit for human consumption and that it meets all the required food safety standards.
And we're delighted to have with us the agency's Managing Director, Yompie Burger, who is going to share some insight into the importance of cold chain management and just explain a bit to us about what actually happens to milk when that cold chain is broken. Great to have you with us today, Yompie.
Thanks, Pipin, Wendy, for this opportunity to talk to you two and the listeners. Indeed, you're right. We've going through extreme weird situations where in South Africa, it's expected for those in the value chain to go beyond what is necessary to ensure that we maintain the cold chain. So we do see spikes in certain regional areas that differ slightly from others. I think mostly because of the extreme heat that might occur in the Western Cape and so forth. But generally speaking, we have a major threat in terms of energy supply. And that runs down through the whole, in the upstream, downstream, through the value chain. So, but bear in mind, we talk about milk and we have to really think of milk as something highly complex. And it's something that comprises of water, lactose, which is we call milk sugar, and fat, protein, and then what we call ash, which is the mineral part. But obviously in that, I think most important is, in this case, is the lactose that's available. That's the milk sugar part of it. Now, looking at milk per se, there's always viable organisms in the milk because prior to sterilization of the milk, that's just the way it is. Milk naturally coming from a cow's teat, the first time that it gets in contact with microorganisms, it's actually in the teat canal of the cow. So before that, we can virtually say that it's sterile. So from there's bacteria, and the process continues. So already at farm level, all necessary steps need to be taken to ensure that the milk remains cold, the bacteria is inhibited or preserved from, the milk is preserved from going sour. Now, if we take the milk, as it goes to the factory environment, we all must understand that all the factories in South Africa, the processors, subject their milk to specific raw milk specification, platform test, as we refer to that. So they know already by the time that the milk gets to the factory environment whether that milk is going to survive the shelf life test. Given that information, what is for us and the consumer is important that the lactic acid bacteria in that milk causes the fermentation. And what it basically do is those bacteria attach the lactose, the milk sugar, and the end result of that is you see the pH of the milk drop, and that's where the sour taste comes from. So in short, we must also differentiate at the same time that we talk about 3 to 4 different types of heat treatment of milk. The first one, I think most of the consumers deal with as a problem, is the pasteurized milk, simply because we treat it here between 72 and 80 degrees. And what happens is we reduce the bacterial load in the milk, which is fine, but it's not sterilized. In other words, the minute we subject that milk then to an increase in temperature, there is that opportunity for the bacteria to start interacting with the milk sugar, and then there's a pH that drops. Obviously, there's a multiplication of the bacteria that takes place. So a different story for extended shelf life. Very high temperature treatment of 130 to 145 degrees for a few seconds. And the only difference really there between that milk and UHT milk is that the one is aseptically packed, the UHT milk, in other words, in a sterile environment, whilst the extended shelf life milk is not. So you see this extended shelf life also lasting, but all subject to temperature control. In other words, we have to still put it in the fridge once we've opened it. And for the ESL milk, we have to do the same. Then you have the sterilized milk product, which obviously is so sterile that there's absolutely no bacteria growth. But I think important, let's focus on the pasteurized milk. As I explained now, that there's a lot of live bacteria still in the milk. And when we break the cold chain, the problem starts. Now, the milk pH, normal pH for milk ranges about your 6.7 to 6.9. And if you start deviating slightly from those margins, you will find, I'm talking about slightly, then you will find that there's souring taking place immediately. And that's a process that will continue and continue as long as you don't subject the milk to proper cooling. Once the damage is done, it's done. You've basically sit with a product with a very shorter shelf life than what is expected, and that is temperature control. So it's truly a problem for us.
I've certainly learned a lot through that explanation. Thank you. For example, I didn't realize that the extended shelf life milk and the ultra high temperature treatment milk, the UHT, or what we call long life, it was subjected to the same process, and it was just the packaging that makes the so-called long life milk much be able to last a lot longer, sit on the shelf.
You'll remember UHT milk in the past used to be a strong.
I think it still is, to be honest.
Well, I think it is, but the processing, the technology has become so advanced.
Good to know. Maybe I should try.
Yompi, have you as an agency seen a spike in complaints coming to you about milk going off sooner than it should?
Yeah, well, I must say that geographically it plays a role.
Yeah.
But in general speaking, what causes a problem is that statistical information becomes distorted because some of the complainants, the consumer goes to the store itself, and then it asks for return for its money or whatever the case may be, or replacement of the product, or else they follow the consumer line process, or some consumers will just say, no, this is happening to me. I'll just put this in and buy another 2 liters, except the fact that it happened. So on our case, we have a certain amount of information we place it to logic. If you compromise on the temperature control in the value chain, the milk quality is at stake. That's a given. So yes, we see ups and downs, but we cannot always say that it's directly related to the power cuts that we see these days.
Would you encourage consumers to also inform your agency of a premature souring of a milk product so that you can keep on? Would you mind giving out the correct email address, Yompi?
Fantastic. In short, the Dairy Standard Agency is really there to promote the improvement of dairy quality and safety in the industry, obviously in the interest of our industry, but most of all the consumer. And for that reason, we've got a very specific project that deals with consumer complaints. And if I say consumer, it could be in that case any person that's complaining about a dairy product. So whether it relates to souring, or it could be a chemical off flavor, or it could be any other reason why let's say gelation in your milk. Why are these fat globules drifting on my milk? All those related complaints, you can really contact us at our landline, which is 012 665 4250, or you can contact us at info@dairy, DAIRY, dairy, standard, standard.co.za.
Okay.
Jompie Burger, thank you so much for your time, Managing Director of the Dairy Standards Agency in South Africa. Before we talk to Milk SA about what we can do as consumers to keep our milk from going sour, let's take a listen to some of your input that's come through on the topic already.
Hi, Pippa. That's an interesting conversation relating to pasteurized versus long life milk. I'd like to know, though, is there a difference in how healthy the one is over and above the other, or if they are equally healthy and makes no difference, especially for young children? Thank you.
Perhaps our next guest might be able to answer one or two of them. Before we introduce her, a few more of your WhatsApp text comments. Peter in Kenilworth saying he makes custard with milk that has a hint of turning sour. I guess maybe the added sugar and the like masks the slight sour flavour. That's an interesting one.
My own custard from scratch, and that's never occurred to me. But I'm going to try it, but just the thought of sour milk custard doesn't appeal, to be honest. But I'm going to keep an open mind, and I'll certainly try that.
I know it's useful in baking. I have got particularly some very old-fashioned scone recipes and that sort of thing, which call for deliberately soured milk. In some cases, one even says take milk and add a teaspoon of lemon juice
vinegar,
to make it sour. Here's another suggestion from someone saying, I use sour milk in my garden's compost heap. Scorpio saying, I work in retail to maintain the cold chain from the time the milk is offloaded from the truck into the store fridge. It's got to be done within about 7 minutes, and much of the time this is not happening. That's very interesting. The big question then is, what can we do as consumers to make sure we don't contribute to the problem? It's one thing to say we expect the retailers and the producers of milk to take the extra steps needed to make sure that cold chain is preserved. But what about our role in maintaining it? Let's bring in Christine Layton, who is the project manager of Milk SA's Consumer Education Project. Christine, welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy, for the invitation.
So do you have any advice for consumers as to what we can do to lower the risk of having to pour away or find something else to do with milk that has gone sour before it should have done? For example, should we be more mindful of where in the fridge we're putting it?
Yes, I think listening to your voice notes, you've got quite a clever audience to say. They really gave some good ideas. Yes, first of all, the fridge door, that's one place you should not store it. So, because every time you're opening a door in a relatively warm room. So the temperature fluctuates a lot in there, and we know now that as soon as the temperature fluctuates, the milk goes up and down, the cold chain is broken, then the souring process starts. So preferably put your milk at the back of the fridge. That is the best place to store it.
Most people put it in the door. Myself included, put it in the door. Yep. So there's a learning already. Thank you for that. One thing I've started doing, particularly in the hot summer months, Christine, is taking an actual cooler box with me to the shops with ice bricks and leaving that in the boot of my car. I think you probably told me to do it, Wendy. Is that something you would endorse?
I would definitely say plan your shopping, especially now during the load shedding. Plan that if you know you're going to do shopping today, pack a cooler bag with a brick. And also, your journey can be prolonged in load shedding, and you might have parked your car in the hot sun all day, so your boot is already warmed up. So the idea is then to put the milk in the cooler bag. And I have a little cheat in my boot. If I really have to do, and I don't have the cooler bag there, everything in my boot I would wrap around the milk. So if I have a towel or another shopping bag, just wrap it down until you get home. So just to protect that milk from the exposure of the temperature that's in your boot or in the environment around it. But the cooler bag is definitely the best idea to keep your product cold until you get home, and then into the fridge as soon as you get home.
Once it's in the fridge, when the lights go out, Christine, obviously the best thing to do is not to open the fridge, because then you can at least keep things cool inside. But is there anything else we can do to help maintain the temperature inside the fridge while the power is off?
It's quite a tricky one. What I would suggest is if you are able to buy a few extra bricks, keep them in the freezer. These little bricks that you can stack in all corners in your freezer. If the temperature goes off, the load shedding starts, pop that in your fridge, because that's especially in your door, because you're protecting your products inside the fridge, because all the products are exposed to load shedding, not only milk and cream. They just happen to be very perishable products, so you've got to protect them a little bit more. So yes, definitely use the brick in the fridge. That does help to keep the temperature down. That's what I would suggest.
I want to ask you a question which you would have heard one of our listeners pose in that WhatsApp message, and that is, yes, there might be slight taste differences between the pasteurized and the long life milk. But what about the health aspect? Do we lose any nutrients with that heating the milk up to those very high temperatures in order to extend its shelf life?
Okay, lovely question, because we always get that question. Which one is better? They are both good enough. There's a minute change between the nutrients, but the main nutrients that are retained, whether you're doing UHT, because the process is so fast that you're not damaging the nutrients. So you're still benefiting. So there's no difference. You can use either or. Yeah.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you for that. One last question before we say goodbye, Christine. If somebody has milk that has started going a little bit sour, do you have any suggestions on what to do with it other than pouring it down the drain?
Yeah, I think it's always good to inspect the milk before you drink it, to make sure that it has by taste judge how badly it's soured. But often after the sell-by date, and the sell-by date is the one that the product is usually still good after that. By the use-by date, you might feel maybe it's gone past its best taste profile. But then decide whether you can still use it, and then I would suggest use it into baked products. Anything like a pancake, a baked goods, soups. I would caution to drinking it. Might just not be so nice in your tea,
Definitely
but
not.
Definitely, you can definitely use it. And yeah, that's what I suggest.
Christine Layton, thank you so much for those practical tips. Project manager of Milk SA's Consumer Education Project, and already a message in from Andrew saying, thanks guys, I've just moved my milk to the back of the fridge.
Oh,
You're not the only one. I would put money on it,
doing the
Andrew.
same.
I'll be doing the same when I get home. Thank you for that.
Lunch with Pippa Hudson
on CapeTalk.